We're live now, so we
Good
can
to go.
start anytime, yeah.
We'll bring this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. I need a motion for the adoption of the minutes, please.
A resolve that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held virtually on Monday, December 14th, 2020, be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Draycott and seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have 3 delegations this evening. Our first delegation is the Junkyard Dogs, and representing that group is Trevor Shackleton and Blair Geisel. And I see Blair was on the screen.
Nope. Can I share my screen, or are you just going to follow the slide presentation that I provided you?
Oh, not share the screen, but you can turn on your video.
Yeah, go ahead and turn on your video.
Okay. So you said you can't share the screen, or I can't share the screen? Fine.
Council will follow along.
Okay, that's good. Anyway, I'd like to thank council for letting us Junkyard Dogs make a presentation. I'm Blair Geisel, and I'm the president of the club. Trevor Shackleton is maybe having some troubles getting on, but he may join us later. He's the committee chair for the Trails Committee. And what we're doing today is we're talking about a proposal for the development of the old Portage landfill site. And on the second slide, we talk about who are the Junkyard Dog Cycling Club. And we were incorporated as a nonprofit 12 years ago, but we've been around a lot longer than that. Currently, we have over 300 members. And unlike our name, Junkyard Dog Cycling Club, we're not a cycling club, we're a sort of a multi-sport club. We've got cycling, skiing, hiking, runners, and snowshoers as members and use our trails. So that's it's a fairly multifaceted. Go to the next slide. It talks about the services that we provide for our club members, and we have a 12-kilometer trail system south of the town. It's an all-season system. We groom it in the winter for hiking, cycling, and walking and snowshoeing. It starts at the dump and it goes south all the way to McClellan Drive, and then from the 240 bridge on the north side of the river all the way east to Angle Road, and then there's a loop in the center that goes almost all the way up to the Burnside. So that's one trail system we provide. The second thing, if you go to the next slide, we operate a Kids of Mud program, which is a program that is sanctioned by the Manitoba Cycling Association, and it's to teach kids to learn to ride and to learn to race. Our last program, we had 16 children, and we have 5 coaches in that particular program. The third thing we do, and that's the next slide, and that is for the past 3 years, excuse me, we've been grooming classic cross-country ski trails on the Portage Golf Course. They've been good enough to give us that facility, and we've been doing that. We don't currently groom for skate skiing, but that is something that we may be doing in the near future. We've got about 7 kilometers of trails out there. Go to the next slide. Our revenue comes from sale of memberships. Our membership prices vary anywhere from $25 for an individual hiker or skier, all the way up to $95 for a family membership for the full package, cycling, skiing, and hiking. And we periodically get grants as well. We've had grants from the Community Foundation for each district, and we've had Sport Manitoba grants. So that's how we fund ourselves. What we're proposing, the next slide, is we're proposing to construct a bike park. And a bike park is set up with various types of features to teach people how to ride a bike. And these features vary in requiring skill levels. There's things that are suitable for 5-year-olds to ride, to features out there that would be more advanced and be very difficult to ride. And the purpose of them is partly to train people to deal with different types of terrain, teeter-totters, skinny logs, things like that, things they have to go over. And it's also it's quite entertaining. It's a form of activity. The next one shows a slightly different picture of a bike park. They're generally made with earthen features and wood. We would like to do this at the old dump hill because for a couple of reasons. One, there's some unused space out there. Two, it's close to an urban area, so it's easily accessible for people who want to use it. And the third most important thing is there's slope there. Pretty flat around Portage la Prairie, but there's we've got a man-made hill with some slope. That's kind of a key element if you're going to be building a bike, so that you have down slopes to go down, so you can do different features. If you go to the next slide, that's the one showing the property map of the area surrounding the old dump hill, and you can see an area that's outlined in blue. That's the property that the dump sits on. The dump sits on the upper right-hand corner, upper left-hand corner, which actually occupies a small portion of that 65 acres. And when we look at this site, the dump hill and that accompanying property, it is really an amazing opportunity for recreation. It's very underutilized. Like we're proposing a bike park, but there's also tobogganing that takes place there. And that's probably the most cost-effective sport. I don't think the city puts much money into that facility. But there's some days there's 40, 50 kids out there tobogganing. There's more potential for that to take place. There's also a lot of wild area in that property. There's George's Lake, there's a couple of marshes, there's woodlands. So there's the opportunity in there for interpretive trails through nature trails. And all of this could be used as an educational, recreational site. Now, we're not proposing that we do all those things, but we're thinking the city has an opportunity to do some of this. Go to the next slide. That's just regarding the tobogganing. What could be installed would be a magic carpet, which is just a conveyor system, like you see in airports, that would convey people up the hills, snowboard and toboggan. But not a tremendous investment, but it would make a big difference, to the users using the place. You go to the next slide, which is titled Scotliff, Miller, and Murray. If we were to proceed with this project, we would be working with that company in order to decide bike park. They've got a reputation of doing this sort of work in Manitoba. Bison Butte, which was the site of the Canada Games a couple of years ago for mountain biking. They've done the North Cape Trails in Dobbin, which is the site of the site for the cycling events for the 2021 Summer Games. Mississippi Bike Park, and they've also just recently done the Neepawa Bike Park. So they have a lot of skill at this. If you go to the next slide, I think the city will probably recognize the name Scotliff, Miller, and Murray because they did the Portage la Prairie Recreation Framework Plan a few years back. They're not unknown to the city. On to the next slide, a photograph of the face of the dump hill. That's the north side. And you can see that it's badly scarred from vehicle traffic, four-wheel drive traffic, which poses a couple of problems. You can imagine that's not a very safe place to be tobogganing. Some of those ruts are actually a foot to a foot and a half deep. The other thing is that dump has been covered with soil as a method of protecting and keeping the hazardous materials under there inside the dump, inside the hill. And unfortunately, these trenches cut directly into the garbage and has compromised the protection of the skin that's over it. And that is a problem, like I said, both from safety and from an environmental standpoint. Go to the next slide. You'll see that there's I've got a no trespassing sign there. A lot of times people use the dump, or vehicles use the dump, in order to access some of the private properties out there. And there's been a lot of confrontation, especially with a couple of landlords, because all these vehicles keep coming across the property. And if this site were more secure, they wouldn't have that, they wouldn't be able to go up onto the dump, go over this outside, and then enter some private property. Go to the next slide, which is what Junkyard Dog requires from the city of Portage la Prairie. That's today. And obviously, we need permission to build a bike park. There's a couple of other things we need. We need the city to repair the damage to the surface and to the cover of the dump. And it's, like I said, it's both a safety and an environmental hazard. And if they're going to go to do that, and that's got nothing to do with our bike park, that's just something that I think needs to be done at some point. But what we do need is we need the site to be secured from vehicle traffic, because if we're going to invest in infrastructure, and if you were going to invest in covering the damage on the field, the last thing you would want is four-wheel drive truck back up there, demolishing it again and including our infrastructure. So those are the things that we are looking for today from the city. I don't think Trevor has managed to log in. So that completes our presentation, but I am prepared to answer any questions that you might have regarding the project.
Thank you, Blair. We'll open up for questions from council. Councillor Draco,
Yes.
I see you.
Melissa?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you as well, Mr. Geisel, for your presentation tonight. It's a very interesting concept. I know that you stated in the beginning of your presentation that the Junkyard Dogs does have memberships for people that are using trails that you are providing. What's your proposition if you do the bike park? Is it open to the public or is it by membership only? Do you have a plan for that?
That's to be decided, and part of that will determine what kind of funding we get and who does the maintenance of the bike park, because it's certainly not. There's certainly a lot of cost after it's constructed. It's being used, boards have to be replaced. So if it were something, let's say the city were going to take over and do the maintenance, then probably we wouldn't require a membership. But if we have to cover the ongoing costs of the maintenance, then likely we would require a membership.
If I could just ask a follow-up question, Your Worship, just for clarification. So we're talking about the north side of the dump hill where kids currently toboggan down that. You're recommending that we do some repair to that part of the hill so that tobogganing can continue. And where are you actually proposing the bike park be in relation to the toboggan hill?
We haven't obviously finalized exactly where, but a large portion of it would occur on the top. And don't forget, there would be perhaps a small portion of the north face might be used. But don't forget, there's lots of space off on the south side as well that could be used. But the engineer that we're working with and ourselves, we're quite aware that it's important to maintain the tobogganing area, and we would not infringe on it to any extent. There's lots of area out there for us.
Councillor Wall, did you have your hand up earlier for a question?
I did. I think most of my question was answered, but the north face of that hill, it looks pretty bad in the picture here. Does it need a lot of fill to fill those ruts and then be graded and compacted, or what does it need to bring it up to snuff?
I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that, but I think you're right. It would require fill and packing and grading. And it's not just, the damage is not just limited to that part. There's damage on the upper portion as well as on the
Well, I think it would be in the city's interest to want to maintain the cap on that landfill, on that old landfill, to contain what's underneath.
Other questions from council?
Sorry, did you refer to me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Geisel. I really want to thank you for coming here tonight. Secondly, I really appreciate the work that you and your group does, and the quality of the paths and all the work and the effort that you put into it. Most of my questions have been answered as well, but I would just like to expand on the one question regarding the environmental issue. Through your study with, I guess, Miller, who's in your Miller, Scatliff, Miller, and Murray, have you done any kind of environmental assessment as a result of turning it into, I won't call it a commercial enterprise at this point in time, but into an enterprise where you've got to build and dig? Being an old landfill site, is there any environmental issues that could come up as a result of that? Have you done that homework yet?
No, we have not done that work, but obviously that would be part of the study and the design. From what I understand of the engineer Alex Mann that I deal with there, they have worked on other refuse sites or landfill sites that have been reclaimed, so this is not new to them. And anything that we did would not, there would be no excavation into the site. We'd have to bring in fresh fill in order to build something if we were adding a berm or a mound or something to that effect.
Super, and that's all. Thank you, Your Worship.
Any further, Councillor Knox?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Blair, for coming tonight. Just to follow up on when you talk about the securing of the site, you are referring to a fence, I assume, that you're.
Yes, I don't see what else would work. And to go back a few years, unfortunately it was fenced. A fair percentage of that site had a fence around it, and the city removed it. It wasn't a complete fence, so vehicles were still getting in, but I don't see any other way of excluding vehicles.
Thanks.
Any further questions from council? Well, Mr. Guys, I want to thank you very much for taking time out to present to us this evening. We will be looking at this further. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our second delegation this evening is from Manitoba Hydro, and this is Maggie Bratland from Manitoba Hydro. Maggie, are you there? Welcome to council.
Thank you.
The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you for the time on your agenda today. First, a question. I had sent a link to a presentation, and I also have a presentation I can share if I have control of the screen. Is it better for you to review it yourselves and I speak to it, or should I share my screen?
Is it the same one that's on the agenda?
We believe we have the copy of the presentation on council's agenda and accessible to the public if they wish. But we're having some problems with our screen sharing and our YouTube broadcast. So I'm going to ask that you just talk council through your presentation.
Sounds good. Okay, well, I'll do my best to point you to the slides that I'm speaking to. And I have shortened my presentation for the purposes of your agenda today. So I'm just going to hit a few highlights, and then I'll leave it to council to ask whatever questions you might have more interest in. So my name is Maggie Bratland, and my colleague Lindsay Thompson is here with us today as well. We work for Manitoba Hydro in the transmission area of the business in planning and doing environmental assessment and public engagement on new transmission developments or on major repairs of transmission infrastructure, which is what we have to talk to you about today. So the project that we wanted to tell you about and tell you about the feedback we've received from your constituents is called BP 6 and 7. On that first slide, you can see the picture of a damaged tower. That damage was sustained in October of 2019 in the huge storm, and we lost roughly 50 transmission towers that service your area. You scroll down a bit, I'll take you to the picture, the schematic of a tower. Gives you an idea of what these structures are. They are a steel lattice structure, roughly 30 to 38 meters tall. As I said, we have to replace roughly 50 of these towers. The next slide is a slide showing the original location of the transmission line with the red line. Hopefully you can all see that there. So the line originates at Portage, Saskatchewan station, and it travels west all the way to just east of Brandon. And it takes power along two separate lines that hang from those towers. When we looked at restoring this line in place and came up to the Long Plain First Nation land, realized that the development that has happened on that parcel of land is now very close to the transmission right-of-way. and is no longer within our safety tolerances and current standards that are allowable for transmission line operation. So we have to relocate the transmission line. If you go to the next slide, the green segment is the segment that was damaged in the storm. The slide after that has a yellow line. That is our temporary line that we built immediately after the storm so that we could maintain service to the area while we're planning this new transmission line. And then finally, a map with a pinkish purple set of lines on it. These lines are the segments that we are considering to form the new transmission location. So we wouldn't build all of these segments. They're all alternatives that would string together to form the new route for the transmission line. There's 18 segment alternatives in total. These segments have been the focus of our public stakeholder and Indigenous engagement program that we've been underway on since, I think, November we started our conversations. We've had a number of virtual information sessions that were open to the public. We've held interested parties meetings and stakeholder meetings with folks like MI, the city, the RM, the water treatment plant folks have been kind enough to meet with us. And we've got a lot of feedback from individuals about the various segments, how they feel that they are impacted by those segments, and ways that we can limit those impacts or mitigate concerns. Skipping down the slides, I'm going to take you to a slide with a big blue box that says round 1, round 2, and anticipated next steps. So we're coming to the end of what we call our round 1 of public engagement, where we've gathered feedback and we are starting to analyze that feedback. The output of that and our internal evaluation will be what we call a preferred route. At that time, we will come back out to the public, interested parties, and Indigenous communities with what Manitoba Hydro feels is the best option for where to place this transmission line replacement. We anticipate that that will be mid to the end of February by the time we get to that point of this project. We will open up for discussion again, get feedback from all the folks that have things they'd like to share, and talk more about ways that we can mitigate concerns. After that, we'll file for an Environment Act license, which we hope to do later this spring, possibly early this summer. And we need an Environment Act license from the province to build this project. We hope, provided we get the approvals we need, to be building the project in 2022. So I ran through my information pretty quickly. I just want to open the floor to any questions that you might have for us.
Questions from council? Councillor Knox?
Thank you, Maggie, for attending this meeting and giving us some information. Is that online portal still open for community members to give their feedback, or is that closed now?
I'm going to ask Lindsay to fill us in on the date that will be closing.
My understanding is it's open until January 20th, so there's still another week. There's more comments or feedback to share.
So in here, from some discussions with some landowners on the island who've had discussions with Manitoba Hydro, one of the things that they were told was that Manitoba Hydro would be providing and working with them for planning for developing the island as a whole for future development, and providing those resources to them. And they just haven't heard anything back, and I'm just kind of wondering where that is in this plan.
Thank you for that question or statement. We are working with the Mayfairs.
Yeah.
To understand what their future development plans might look like, because they are obviously one of the most heavily affected landowners that we would need new land rights from. So we are working actively with them towards that end. I don't well, I shouldn't say I don't believe, I'm not aware of whether or not we have made that offer to other landowners.
Yeah, no, specifically, I'm talking the Giffins from Mayfair, right? Is that, but they, since that discussion happened, they just hadn't heard any more. And so.
Was this recently that they communicated that to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
I will reach out to them tomorrow through our
Great.
land agent so that we can make sure that we have our ducks in a row. I was just recently in a conversation getting all the information together to get that process started. So
Excellent. Appreciate that.
Sorry, Councillor Knox, I just wanted to clarify, I just went on the website and it's the 15th of January is when it's closing.
Thank you.
Councillor Meyer, I believe you had a question?
Yeah, just a real information question. And certainly thank you, Ms. Bratland and Ms. Thompson, for the presentation. I guess the only question I have, and I know this is just information purposes, but what's the rationale of why you got the temporary line? What was the rationale of why not just keeping the temporary line and turning it into a permanent line? Was there a rationale?
Very good question, and that's one of the most commonly asked questions we've had. The temporary line is built alongside Highway 1, and it's in a highway road allowance. It is also a single conductor line. What we need to build in order to meet the needs of the area long term is a double conductored line that needs a much more substantial tower, and there's insufficient width along that right of way for us to place the towers and still maintain safety for the highway.
Super, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Other questions from council? Okay, I don't see any other questions. Maggie and Lindsay, I want to thank you very much for coming out and presenting tonight to us. Thank you for the
Thank you.
information. It's good
Thanks
seeing
for the
you again.
opportunity. I'm sure we'll speak again.
You bet. Take care.
Thank you.
Our third delegation this evening is Madison Connolly from the Fort Lorraine Museum. Madison, are you on the line?
I am, yes.
Oh. Well, welcome to council.
Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I am very excited to be able to present to council the ins and outs of the Fort Lorraine Museum this past year. We did conduct our annual report for 2020, and I'd like to share that information with you as a major stakeholder of the museum. So I'll just jump right in. I believe you have the document and it is available to the public. So we did have a little bit of a challenge this year, of course, with COVID-19. We did start a little bit later than usual, about 3 weeks later of our regular season. And we did have to cancel quite a number of our large signature events, like our escape room program, our Yuletide and Halloween events, and our Mother's Day open market. But despite that, we actually almost doubled our visitorship this year, which is astounding and not something I actually predicted. And I try and predict as much as possible because surprises, I don't like them very much. And I'm sure you have dealt with enough surprises yourselves this year. So I'll just dive right into the numbers here. Last year, we saw about 4,800 visitors. And this year, we saw about 8,400 visitors come to the museum. Much of this was due to our corn maze program, which we did launch this year with help of Kevin Yule, who is our neighboring farmer and helped seed the field next to us. And 6,000 people went through the corn maze this year. So much of our visitorship is due to the corn maze. But that being said, we're just happy people were able to come out and enjoy the museum in a different way this year. And we were able to offer smaller scale events like our featurette days with vintage cars, our craft beer night, our Fun with Farm Animals Day, and everything was done with safety measures in mind, of course. So I do have a little bit of a pie chart that goes over our demographics this year. And not surprisingly, most of our visitors came from Portage la Prairie and Winnipeg. And Winnipeg's numbers actually went up 12.7% this year. And much of that was due, I'm sure, people had less of perimeteritis this year trying to get out of the city. So we're very thankful for that. And we did see a decrease in volunteer hours this year, just due to the fact that we couldn't host any large scale events. So we were down about 100 hours in volunteering this year, but that was something that we did predict. In terms of other large scale events, we accomplished much this year, which I'm very thankful for. So for education, we did have our regular signature programs like our Prairie Sundays, and we were able to get through our trivia night fundraiser right before lockdown started in March. And our tea party tours were more popular than ever this year, just for something safe for families to do. So in 2018, when I started at the museum, we had 7 tea parties booked. Last year we had 14 booked, and this past summer we had 33. So it was just a massive increase, and we had the same amount of staff and we were able to handle it. So it was pretty great. We did house one in-house exhibit, our communication culture exhibit, over summertime, which we produced ourselves. And then we were able to host one of our traveling exhibits, which was called What Lies Beneath: Shipwrecks of Lake Superior. Excuse me. And that was from the Thunder Bay Museum. And we saw a lot of people come out for those, especially when we were seeing more homeschooling happening this year. So we saw a lot of families coming out for educational purposes, which was really great to see. And we did get some financial assistance this year from the Community Foundation. We created and installed 20 new information panels to go on the outside of all of our major heritage buildings. And those were translated in French and Dakota. So we are trying to make a push to be a bit more culturally inclusive at the museum, which is excellent. And we've also included 10 new audio sound effects in some of the heritage buildings to make the experience more multisensory for different learners. We did launch the research portion of our Indigenous Perspectives project, which is basically a massive overhaul of the content at the museum. We want to include more Indigenous voices, local Indigenous voices, in the content at the museum, and make sure that we are delivering their histories ethically and appropriately. Moving on to heritage preservation. With a lot of more free time on our hands, because we couldn't do any massive big projects, we did get a lot of renovations done. Partly from my own hands, which I did enjoy. I like that, a little bit of an outlet there. So we did redo the exteriors of the Burton House, the print shop, the general store, and we replaced rotten boards on a lot of these heritage buildings. We restructured the Thrushman's bunkhouse, and it'll be repainted next year. And we did put up a new fence line for added security, especially because we had the corn maze happening next door to us. We did continue on with our Kwanzit reorganization project, which is basically a whole overhaul of our collections building, and re-established our database because half of them were actually card catalogs from the 70s. So those are all digitized now. It's a huge project, but it's really helpful for research purposes. And this year, we're very excited to announce that we relaunched the Fort Restoration Project fundraising portion. So we did establish a new reserve account for that project, which is to, phase 1 is to restore the bastion towers on each side of the fort. They've deteriorated quite a bit, and they've been closed off to the public for a number of years. So our hope is to rebuild those and have them open, and also include more Indigenous-led exhibits inside them. So that's kind of the hope for spring. And if not spring, then summer. Hopefully we do see the fundraising get to that level at that point. We did take on the Heritage Biodiversity Project this year, in which we re-established our prairie ecosystem. We planted endangered prairie grasses, 21 full-sized Manitoba designated trees, 50 shrubs, and 1,000 square feet of prairie grasses and wildflowers on the property, and also installed some pollinator shelters. And we did have a biologist come to the museum in the spring to do a quick survey of the pollination activity on the grounds, and then she is going to come back next spring to evaluate the differences. So we're going to see some, hopefully some quantitative outcomes from that project. Tourism, Obviously, this year looked a little bit different than what we had hoped for tourism, but we did see, as I mentioned, quite an increase of tourism from Winnipeg and other areas of Manitoba, which is good because we didn't really want to see anything else this summer. So that was good. And the museum is a part of the Central Manitoba Tourism Board, as well as I sit on the Portage Tourism Committee. So I work really closely with other tourism entities in the region. So we're all working together to make sure that we are a place to visit in Manitoba. As far as community partnerships and collaborations, most of our collaborations actually come from taking part in other large-scale events off-site, and of course that couldn't happen this year. So instead, we've done a lot of digital programming and partnered with other organizations to accomplish that, and hoping to build more meaningful relationships as we move forward with our Indigenous Perspectives program. Whew. Sorry, that was a lot of talking. A lot happened this year. All right, goals and objectives. So at the end of every year, we as a board and staff go over some general goals that we had the year before, what we accomplished and how we wish to grow as an organization in the following year. So I'll just go over that quickly for you. So at the end of 2019, we wanted to develop more in-house permanent exhibits, which we did with our 20 new information panels. And that is an ongoing project, as you will see as I go down the list. All of these are ongoing because we can just keep growing. The next goal was to increase exposure, visitation, and community outreach, which I believe we did, especially to the Winnipeg market this year. And hopefully next year we can go a little bit more broader, depending on how restrictions are. Continue restoring and renovating deteriorating heritage buildings and structures, which we did do, as I mentioned, and hopefully next year we can just continue with the fort project. That's the main goal for next year. Reorganize existing exhibits and displays and rotate the collection. We do that every spring to make sure that every artifact that we get goes on display at some point, because our donors are really important to us and they'd like to see their artifacts on display. And develop new programs and events for underrepresented demographics. So we are always constantly restructuring our programs and making sure that we're being as inclusive as possible. And that is also an ongoing initiative. So as a board and staff, we discuss goals for this year, 2021, and I'll just outline those now. We want to establish at least 2 more in-house permanent exhibits. We have started one, which is Women in Uniform, which we're hoping to have for the spring in our military building, and that'll be a permanent in-house exhibit using artifacts from our collection. And we also want to, we're working on an Indigenous historic timeline from the voices of Indigenous peoples in our community. So that will be on display either in the new bastions or in the trading post if the bastions aren't completed yet by the spring. And we want to increase general exposure, visitation, and community outreach, of course, always. And we're going to be using our advertising monies very carefully this next year, just keeping in mind who can actually visit Portage la Prairie. We would like to continue restoring and renovating our heritage buildings and structures, specifically the fort bastions this year, as I mentioned, with the fort restoration project. The Thrushman's bunkhouse, the trading post Paul house, and Hurry house do need to be weatherproof. So we're going to be Thompson waterproofing a lot of those buildings this year. And developing new programs and learning opportunities for underrepresented demographics. Part of this is going to be creating more digital programs for our visitors, virtual field trips and DIY programs online, and also in person if we can. So those are our major goals for next year, and they're never ending, and it's good. We keep growing and keep seeing greater audiences coming to the museum. And as we enter this next year, I'm just thankful that we have council behind us, and thank you so much for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. I'm going to open up for questions from council. Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Worship. Madison, I just wanted to thank you very much for coming this evening to share with council what you're all accomplishing down at the museum. It was a very difficult year, but it was really interesting to watch how you took a really bad situation that could have been detrimental to the museum and just created new ideas and new ways to reach the community. You just did a fabulous job this year along with your staff, and it was very enjoyable sitting on this board, watching what the museum, what it can be in our community. So I can't wait till next year for us to grow even more. I think you got a lot of exposure in the community because a lot of people were looking right here in Portage for different things to do. And so excited for that word of mouth to spread and for your programs to take shape next year as well. So congratulations on a very difficult but positive year, and looking forward to the museum next year.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing that, okay. Now I want to thank you very much for coming out this evening virtually and presenting to us. And great job out there on a very challenging year. Yeah, well done. I think we're all looking forward to 2021 and certainly the corn maze and some of the other things that are going to go on out there. So again, thank you very much for presenting.
Thank you very much. And the corn maze has been confirmed for next year. So we'll see you out there in the fall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our delegations for this evening. So we've got a couple of public hearings. We're going to open the public hearing for variation PC 8220, and this is for Orchard at 210 Countess Avenue East. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? You got nobody registered, eh?
No.
Okay, one last time. Anyone here to speak to the hearing? Okay. Need a motion to close the public hearing, please?
Be it resolved, and I so move, that the public hearing for variation PC 8220 for Orchard for 210 Countess Avenue East now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Okay, Council, before you from the Planning and Economic Development Committee, of course, is a request for a variation. The issue is to vary the following: the front yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 4.57 meters, and also the side yard requirement when there's no attached garage or carport of 4.6 meters to be reduced to 3.5 meters. There's also a sketch and a detailed drawing for your information. And as usual, our alternatives are to approve or deny the variation, request for variation. So a bit of the background real quick is that Marvin Orchard is applying for a variation to allow the following, as I just previously stated. And what he intends to do is construct a detached garage. So when they did a review of the area, it shows that there's about 13 houses on the south side of the street. 10 of them are about 6 meters or more back from the front property line, while the remaining 3 are 4.7 meter, 8 meters, and as little as 0.9 meters back from the front property line. So of the 10 houses on the north side of the street, 5 of them are approximately 6 meters or more back from the front property line, while the remaining 5 vary from approximately 5.6 to as little as 2.44, again, back from the front property line. As you're aware, the building is in a R1 or a residential single family zone. The application has been circulated to various city departments. There have been no concerns. And public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius, and there have been no objections. So it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Marvin Orchard to vary the following: the front yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 4.57 meters, and the side yard requirement with no attached garage or carport of 4.6 meters to be reduced to 3.5 meters. This is to allow for the construction of a detached garage at the property known as 210 Countess Avenue East, which is legally described as Lot 21, Block 4, Plan 1998 in the parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll open the public hearing for variation PC 84-20. This is for McIver at 435 Crescent Road East. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Again, nobody registered for this.
No one registered, no.
Okay, need a motion to close the hearing?
With that being said, and be it resolved, and I so move that the public hearing for variation PC 8420 for Ken McIver of 435 Crescent Road East now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Budd. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Okay, Council, before you, you have a report from the Planning and Economic Development Committee, and again, a request for a variation. This time, the issue is to vary the rear yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 1.52 meters. Like the previous, our alternatives to approve or, of course, to deny. Some of the background is Ken McIver, the applicant, is applying for a variation order to allow the rear yard requirement to be reduced. He'd like to construct an attached garage this time on the rear of the house. Some of the previous minutes are there for your reference as council has approved them in the past. This building is in a R1 residential single family zone, and the application has been circulated to the various city departments with no concerns. Public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius, and there have been no objections. So with that said, and it's the recommendation of this committee, and I so move, that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Ken McIver to vary the rear yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 1.52 meters at the property known as 435 Crescent Road East, which is legally described as Lot 6, Block 8, Plan 21-428 in the parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Okay, we'll move into committee. First up is Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Other than a small item in new business for a report, the City Planning and Economic Development Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. Community Services Committee. Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for Community Services Committee this evening.
Thank you. And Councillor Wall, Waterworks Committee, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for Waterworks Committee this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Espy, Transportation Committee, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Councillor Knox, Public Safety Committee, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from the Public Safety Committee this evening.
Thank you. We have no deferred business this evening. However, we have a number of items of new business. First up is the 2020 projects in progress, transferred to reserves, and this is Finance Committee. Councillor Buds.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as council can see, we have something to decide on in terms of transferring 2020 operating funds to complete projects in progress in 2021. This is not uncommon where we have things that simply do not get completed in one operating year and must roll into the next. And this is just a recommendation for administration, and I'll be moving to support it. We move those funds with it. So as I mentioned, some of these things do roll in to other years, and the following capital projects funded by operating funds in 2020 will have the remaining funding transferred to reserve funds in anticipation for those projects to be completed in 2021. And so $729,000 transferred to the utility fund reserve, and you can see the list of those projects that will be included with those funding transfers. So water line renewals, sewer line renewals, utility rate study, which is currently in progress, and then the equipment refurbishment. And then on our general side, $155,000 in operating funds transferred to general fund reserve. And you can see that there's Dutch elm that needs to be done with and some deficiencies related to our paving contract. So it is a recommendation of this committee, and I so move that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie approve the transfer of $729,000 from 2020 utility operating funds to the utility fund reserve and $155,000 for 2020 general operating funding to be general fund reserve to complete 2020 projects in progress in 2021.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions, comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next item of new business is the amendment to the 2021 council meeting dates. And again, this is Finance, Legislative and Property Committee. Councillor Buds.
Thank you again, Your Worship. And just a small change, as council is aware that we've already approved the schedule. And of course, there's already an amendment that needs to be made. And so you can see that the second meeting in April had been set for Wednesday, April 28th, but due to MMAA conference being held out of town during the first half of the week, that conference has now been canceled, and it'll be beneficial to return to the regular schedule and hold a council meeting on the Monday of the 26th. And the June date requires correcting to the second and fourth Mondays of the month as well. So just a couple of small changes. Let's hope that throughout 2021, we don't have to have a whole bunch of additional scheduling conflicts, but that may occur. So it is a recommendation of your committee, and I so move that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie approve amending the date of the second meeting in April 2021 to April 26th, and amending the June meeting dates to Monday, June 14th and Monday, June 28th.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Thank you. Next item of new business is also a Finance, Legislative and Property Committee. This is the November 2020 financial statements. Councillor Buds, please.
Yes, thank you, Worship. This is for council's information. It is a document that we do circulate with council, and it is dated November 30th. And I know you would say, well, we are already done the year. And so there's always a lag effect for what we consider our statement of financial position and our statement of operations being your AK balance sheet and income statement. So our December one will be due in, or will be ready in due course, but this does provide a snapshot view of what our financial position is, both on our general fund and the utility fund at the end of November. We just talked about transferring funds from operating funds into completing capital projects in 2021. And I can say that at this time, we are anticipating a surplus in our general fund and our utility fund. And you can see on page 2 of this report that we are sitting in an actual surplus position at the end of November. I caution that there's still always reconciliations that's typically done in the month of December. So I do expect that surplus to get smaller, but I do trust that we will have surpluses in both of those funds. And so the next set is for the utility fund, and you can see the same situation happening there with surpluses. So that is a good news story that we have surpluses. Some of it is, as we just talked about, is some projects that never got completed, but it is a testament to the work of all of council and all of the staff of the city to bring projects in or under budget for the year. So that is my report, pending any questions.
Any questions? Councillor Buds? Okay, thank you. Next on the new business is the November 2020 building reports, and this is City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Worship. As usual, it's always a pleasure to present a couple of documents. One, of course, the first one is the building report for both the city and the rural split. But as usual, I like to draw your attention to the combined totals as we do look at it from a regional perspective. So really, in short, we obviously know that the dollar value for the permits is less than it was last year. And that's, of course, partly due to a lot of the major projects that have been completed up to this point. But it really is still significant, and it still reached $128 million. And we still have another month left to go. So I'm not quite sure what it'll show like at the end of December. As we mentioned, the permits are actually up, but the dollar value is down. And the largest portion that's up is usually your repair of your residential, and of course some of the repair of your commercial. So that's probably attributed to a lot of the renovations that have been going on. People have been staying home and been taking advantage of the time to do that. So other than that, the rest of the numbers are static, And I'm really excited to see what the end of December brings. And just a real quick shout out to the planning district and the people involved, whether it be PRED and a lot of the other organizations, our city manager, and of course our rural partners and RM of Portage for all the work and effort that's been done on it at this point. And that's my report, unless there's any questions.
Thank you,
And that's
Councilor
my
Meyer.
report.
Our final item of item of old business this evening, and this is the second reading for water and sewer rates for 2021 through 2024, and this is bylaw 20-8710, and this is Finance Committee. Councilor Buds, please.
Thank you, Worship. And as you mentioned, it is relating to bylaw 20-8710, which is our water and sewer rates. So this report originally came to council on September 28th and was given first reading and then forwarded on to the Public Utility Boards, who has now requested that the city complete second reading, but also while doing that is to facilitate a minor change to minimum charges for a 6-inch meter. And so that is outlined in the attached document for the revision December 18th, 2020. But with that being said, it is just that, a minor revision, and we are now in the process of completing this the second reading. So it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie give second reading to the 2021 through 2024 water and sewer rates bylaw number 20-8710.
Moved by Councilor Buds and seconded by Councilor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Okay, council is adjourned.
Sorry, I was just going to say that does conclude my report on that particular item, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councilor Buds. And council is adjourned at 6:56 p.m. and we're going to move right into committee. We'll call committee to order at 6:56 p.m. First up is Finance Legislative Property Committee, Councilor Buds.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development, Councilor Meyer, please. Sorry, Councilor Meyer, you're unmute yourself. Thank you.
Like the Twilight Zone. Thank you, Your Worship. The City Planning and Economic Development Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. Councilor Draycott, Community Services Committee, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We actually do have a presentation this evening from members of the PCRC. We have Kaylee Morrison and Rachel Templeton, and they would like to tell us about the coldest night of the year fundraising campaign. Welcome to council, ladies.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Okay, so I guess we'll get started. I'm Kaylee.
And I'm Rachel.
And we're presenting on behalf of PCRC about Coldest Night of the Year, which is raising money for Portage Community Shelter.
And if you're able to follow along with the PowerPoint presentation that we sent, we'll do our best to speak on each slide. So on the intro slide, on the title page slide, I'll just talk a little bit about the coldest night of the year. The coldest night of the year is a COVID-safe, family-friendly walk to raise money for charities serving people experiencing homelessness, hurt, and hunger. On February 20th, 2021, there's going to be a place for everyone. This year, the Portage Community Shelter is hosting a COVID-safe virtual event with pledges and fantastic sponsorship opportunities. Our goal is to raise $20,000 for the Portage Community Shelter.
So the Portage Community Shelter, formerly known as Rest a Bit, has been open at its current location since July 2020. So from July to December 2020, the shelter has served 44 individuals experiencing temporary or chronic homelessness and provided 471 sleeps. The shelter provides supper and breakfast to all guests. And under Code Red, we are providing a safe warming space in partnership with Prairie Welcome House during the day. So without Portage Community Shelter, 44 individuals would have had nowhere to turn during a global pandemic. Shelter and sustenance are human rights, and your support through Coldest Night of the Year would allow people in our community to meet their basic needs, setting them up for future success.
Okay, we're on slide 2 if you're following along. The coldest night of the year is a moment when tens of thousands of Canadians step outside of their nice, comfy, warm couch and home and to shine a light and welcome inclusion. There's at least 100 cities in Canada that are participating in this event. Coldest Night of the Year started in 2011. And in 2011, there was 2 locations, 2 cities with 440 participants and $111,000 raised. Last year, in 2020, there was 144 locations, 26,000 participants, and over 6 million raised. Because of COVID, this year will be a virtual walk, but you still have to go outside and walk either 2 to 5 km if you're participating. A little bit of extra info, there's no registration fee. So if you want to participate, you don't have to pay a registration fee. If you are walking with a team, you need to make sure that you're walking within your bubble or in your household, depending what the provincial guidelines are by February 20th. And pledging, participating or donating or sponsoring is super easy on the CNOI, the Coldest Night of the Year website. It's really user friendly and you can do everything online. It's family friendly. And if you do get a chance to check out the coldestnightoftheyear.org, so CNOY.org website, it explains a lot of things a lot more in detail. We're going on to slide 4, and on there is a link to watch a video. So when you guys can, please watch that. It's, I think, maybe under 2 minutes. Okay, on slide 5. So you probably noticed my, oh, and Ryan's got his toque on too. You probably noticed our Coldest Night of the Year toques, and no, you can't purchase them. You need, in order to get one of these Coldest Night of the Year toques, you need to be a team captain or on a team and raise at least $150 if you're an adult or $75 if you're a youth. And you need to walk the 2 or 5 kilometers. And as you can see, Councillor Espy has one, and that's because he has a team. And I believe he's already raised over $300 or $400, Councillor Espy. Which one? How much have you raised so far?
I think we're at 250. So
250.
it's a good start.
Okay.
We only started a couple days ago.
Yes, a very good start. And I believe that Jacinda, our youth counselor, and maybe even Nathan might be putting in a team. Okay, and I think, and if you do want to do a team, let us know.
Yeah, so
Haley?
during the month of January, we are looking for team captains. So team captains are the backbone of Coldest Night of the Year. They create their team online, they recruit other people to walk on their team, they encourage them in their fundraising efforts, and they're the first line of communication if a walker has questions or needs help. And team captains can decide how their team will connect. So, you know, a team captain could organize a small distance group walk with masks. They could organize a group FaceTime call, a Facebook Live video. It's up to you.
Okay, so now we're on slide 7 if you're following along. So bundle up your big-hearted business, your club, your church, your organization, maybe your city council for the Coldest Night of the Year. Did you guys know that 92% of Canadians think that it is important for a company to give back, for a business to give back to the community? So Coldest Night of the Year is a unique way for a business, a school, a club, or a church to reach the wide audience of a national event while supporting the Portage Community Shelter. It's a great opportunity for advertising as the company logo. So if you're a business that is sponsoring the event, your company logo will be seen on Facebook and ads and media. It's also a really good way to team build and build pride in the community, even if it's done virtually. We would love to put a nice little challenge out there to council members or any of the businesses in Portage la Prairie. We're going to slide 8. So we'll be asking local businesses to sponsor our event. We have 4 different sponsorship levels, ranging from $500 to $2,500. But if a business isn't able to sponsor, we'd love for them to enter a team. And if there is any businesses interested in sponsoring, they can contact myself or Kaylee. This is a national event. There's lots of publicity. You'll see various cities like Vancouver and Winnipeg on national news. So we're hoping to have Portage la Prairie's star on the Canada map shine a little extra on February 20th.
So thanks for your time tonight, and we hope to see you participating in Coldest Night of the Year on February 20th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for coming out and presenting. And did you have a question, Councillor Knox?
Yeah, I do. Just being a national fundraising event, the question is, and I know people ask this, is if the money that they're giving to when they donate, is it staying in Portage la Prairie, or does it go to a national fund and then get dispersed?
Yeah, so how it works is that all the money raised stays in Portage la Prairie. Like
Awesome.
Raised in Portage stays in Portage.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Wall, you had a question?
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you to Kaylee and Rachel for doing what they're doing and providing a warm place to sleep and some food in the belly for people who need it. And I'll be out there on the coldest night of the year.
That's great. Thank you.
Councillor Butts?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo those comments. Great job. I love the enthusiasm you guys have. I know you said you're going to go and talk to businesses. I assume that you are talking to the Chamber of Commerce to use their network to get this message out as well?
Yes, we are.
Perfect. Good. And any additional support Pred can provide with this, reach out to Eve as well. I know she'll be excited about this type of thing too. So good job, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Draycott, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. I guess I would like to echo thanks very much for your presentation this evening, ladies. It's interesting. I know that the shelter has been well supported in our community, and I can see that this will likely be one of those things that take off like firecrackers. So good job on this, and looking forward to this fundraising event in Portage.
Yeah, that's the hope.
Yes, it's a great initiative. So good job on that. And that does conclude my report this evening, Your Worship. I don't have anything else for community services.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Draycott. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall, please.
The Waterworks Committee has nothing to report this evening, Your Worship.
Thank you. And Transportation Committee, Bob McKenzie, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Public Safety Committee has nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Concludes committee, and committee is adjourned at 7:08 p.m. Thank you for coming out, everybody.